This is Sunday, June 6th, and happy June. My name is Doug Griffin. This is my Sunday school class. We're studying the book of Genesis, and we've been going, in case you just happened in accidentally today, we're now in chapter 31 of Genesis. Just going verse by verse, enjoying the story that's being told and trying to get out whatever meaning God wants us to see. So what has happened at this point? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Jacob and his brother Esau got in a fight. Well, they would have gotten in a fight if Jacob hadn't ran away. So Jacob upset his brother Esau greatly by stealing his birthright, etc. And he goes up north to what he thinks is only be a few days. His mom said, a few days, go visit my brother Laban. So he goes to visit his uncle Laban, falls in love with Rachel. He's tricked into marrying Leah. So, and in order to get both women, he has to work for 14 years because he has no dowry. He has nothing to give to Laban no bride price, right? You purchased the bride and you gave the father all this money or whatever you had, and he didn't have anything. So he said, I'll work. So he works 14 years. Meanwhile, during that time period, he has 11 sons. One daughter that we know of named Dinah. He has other daughters, but they tell us about Dinah because she has an important piece to play in a couple chapters, right? As far as affecting the line of who gets the birthright and etc. So they mention her name. Then he works an extra 6 years because he needs money to support his family. He wants to leave. God is telling him to go back home. God gives him this plan, which he doesn't give God any credit for it, but God gave him this plan, and he ends up with a lot of Uncle Laban's sheep, all through a deal they made, and his goats and his sheep and his cattle, etc., and camels. He ends up with a lot of goods. And at the point where he can tell that Laban's other sons are getting very upset because their father's inheritance is decreasing, and Jacob's is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And he can say, they're about to jump me. I can tell. So in the middle of the night, he sneaks away with his 2 wives, their 2 maids, his 11 sons and daughter, and all that he's got. He just sneaks off in the middle of the night while his father-in-law is celebrating the shearing of the sheep festival. And just like a lot of cultures, they just any reason to have a festival and to slaughter some sheep and eat. So this is the perfect time to leave because there'll be at least 3 days, at least a week actually, about celebrating this feast. They won't notice that we're gone. So just to remind us where we left off, Genesis chapter 31, the second half of verse 19, it says, and Rachel had stolen the household idols that were her father's. So they all leave, but Rachel, just for luck, let me take these idols with us, and doesn't tell anybody. So verse 20, and Jacob stole away unknown to Laban the Syrian, in that he did not tell him that he intended to flee. So he's calling Laban the Syrian because they're in Syria, which is north of modern-day Israel. Doesn't tell him that he's fleeing, so he comes back down into the Palestine area. It's at verse 21, so he fled with all that he had. He arose, he crossed the river, this is the Euphrates River, and he headed toward the mountains of Gilead. They actually weren't called Gilead at the time, but they're just for reference for the reader. Jacob is the one that named them Gilead, and we'll see why in just a few minutes. Verse 22, and Laban was told on the 3rd day of the festival, supposed to go 7 days, that Jacob had fled. Then he took his brethren with him and pursued him for 7 days' journey. So he was 3 days ahead, and it took 3 days to get back to where they were, and then 3 more days to catch up, which it was not hard to catch up. Jacob didn't have a fleet of horses and all that. Laban did, and he had like an army of men. So 7 days it would take to catch up, right? Um, and he overtook him in the mountains of Gilead. But God had come to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night and said to him, "Be careful that you speak to Jacob neither good nor bad." That's a good neutral stance that a lot of us should learn to take. Just neither good nor bad. Just say, what happened? Just ask questions. Because a lot of times we just start out with the accusing. Why'd you do this? Just start out with, I noticed that this was missing, or I know, tell me what happened. So he says, and now listen, this is not Laban's God. Uh, Laban worshiped little gods that you can carry in your pocket, so or in your saddle. So for God to appear to him in a dream is a big deal. So he listened because that had never happened to him before. Uh, God, Job tells us in Job 33, verse 14, that God may speak in one way or in another, yet man does not perceive it. He's saying that God is always speaking to us in various ways. He's always speaking to us. People say, "Oh, I would love to hear from God." We have to train ourselves to listen because God is not silent. And it's not that certain people have these phenomenal gifts of hearing from God. God speaks to everybody. There are just certain people who've learned how to tune into that correct frequency. We can all learn to do that. We can all learn to do that because this is God may speak in one way or another, yet man does not perceive it. It's our fault. In a dream, he then lists different ways that God speaks. This is Job 33, verse 15. In a dream, in a vision of the night, where deep sleep falls upon men while slumbering on their beds. Now he chooses, I'm going to read the rest of it in a second. God chooses dreams oftentimes because it's not like every dream that we have is from God. Sometimes the dream we had is just from too much pizza. It had nothing to do with God. But sometimes you'll have this unusual dream, like, wow, what is that? And the reason he does that is because when we are sleeping is one of the only times that we can't interfere with what God is saying. Because during the day when God might speak to us, we a lot of times can add in our own thoughts or our own interpretation. And so at night, we're just inactive, right? And so it says he'll speak to you in a dream or vision at night. Verse 16 says, then he opens the ears of men and seals their instructions in order to turn man from his deed and conceal pride from man. So perhaps you were going to do something that you shouldn't have done, or you're going in a direction you didn't realize the wrong direction. God will give you a dream. I don't know. Okay, I'm just going to give this example. I think when I turned 50, my wife would start saying to me, I feel like you should go get a checkup. I go, yes, I really should. But it was not a priority. It just kept slipping to the back of my mind. And she'd say, oh, I think you should get a checkup. I said, yes, I'm going to do that. But it just, I did 20 other things and I felt perfectly fine. And it just would go to the back of my mind. I just would forget. Well, one night I had a dream. In the dream, I always dream that I'm in a musical. Always. Even last night, I am always putting either in a show or putting on a show for my entire life. I love going to sleep. I know I'm going to have the most fun dream. We were putting on a show last night in my dream. An improv show. I don't know why I'm going into that. Anyway, I had a dream where I was in a doctor's office, which I never do. I never. I'm always on stage. I'm in a doctor's office, and the doctor is saying, well, we found the cancer, and but we got it all, and so you don't have to worry, and we're going to take care of it. And I woke up and went, what? I never have I don't know. I'm not a worry like that. I'm not worrying. So I said, that must have been God speaking to me. So let me go do what my wife's been telling me to do and go get a checkup. And sure enough, somewhere during the course of dealing with a doctor, he said those exact words to me. And they found it was just prostate cancer. They found it, took care of it. and I'm perfectly fine. But I wouldn't have done that because I just kept putting it off, putting it off. But it was on my wife. God kept speaking in her ear, but it just wasn't, just like, oh, okay, I'll get to that. It was not a priority until I had that dream. So he says that God will, then he opens the ears of man and he seals their instructions. It's like, oh, okay, in order to turn man from his deed, because the deed I was going to do was not going until, it might have been 2 or 3 years. And then when they had checked, they would have said, oh, too late. If only you'd gone 2 or 3 years ago. And conceal pride from man. He keeps back his soul from the pit and his life from perishing by the sword. So there are dreams, there are visions that God will give us at night. Not every night, maybe once every 10 years. So every dream we have where I dreamed that I owned a restaurant in Paris, that could be God, or it could just be, you just saw a picture of McDonald's Las Vegas, and made that up. But he will speak to us sometimes in our dreams. So Laban has this dream where God comes and says, do not speak good or bad, just hold your tongue and just ask him, because Laban was mad. Not only that he had stolen his household goods, but he stolen his daughters and his grandchildren and walked off with all these flocks and everything, and didn't tell him. So he's hot, right? He's chasing after him to kill him. So verse 25. So Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the mountains, and Laban with his brethren pitched in the mountains of Gilead. So they're all there. I'm just going to be right next to you. And Laban said to Jacob, what have you done that you have stolen away unknown to me and carried away my daughters like captives taken with the sword? So at least he's asking. He didn't say, I'm going to kill you. He didn't, but sometimes we just need to ask the questions before we just start screaming at somebody, right? Why did you flee away secretly and steal away from me and not tell me? For I might have sent you away with joy and songs, with timbrel and harp. If you had just told me. Now that's not true, probably, knowing Laban, because Laban's the one that kept talking him into staying longer and longer and longer. But that was a tradition of greeting people with timbrel and harp, and that was like a thing in Exodus 15:20, after they had crossed the ocean, the Red Sea, the Red Sea. It says, then Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took the timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dances. So that's a thing, right? In Judges, it was a thing. Listen to this. In Judges chapter 11, verses 1 and 2, it says, now Jephthah the Gilead, so it's the same area, he lives in Gilead, the same area that we're talking about where Laban and Jacob, their tents are across from each other, and they're about to have a confrontation. Years later, coming back to this area, someone named Jephthah the Gilead was a mighty man in valor, but he was the son of a harlot, and Gilead begat Jephthah. So his father was named after the region. He lived in Gilead, and so, but his mother was a harlot. His daddy was something too, apparently. Now, verse 2, Gilead's wife bore sons, and when his wife's sons grew up, they drove Jephthah out, right? Because they all came from that one mother. He came from the harlot, and said to him, you shall have no inheritance in our father's house, for you are the son of another woman. So they kicked him out. Okay, so now living in that Gilead region, again, where Laban and Jacob are, and they're now surrounded by these other armies who are about to, these Canaanites who are going to take over. So suddenly they want Jephthah, because remember it said that he was a mighty man of valor. He's a great warrior. And in verse 9, it says, when they come to him, it says, so Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, okay, if you take me back home to fight against the people of Ammon, so these are Ammonites who were there. The people of Ammon, Ammon descended actually from Lot. And Lot had 2 sons by his daughters. They're Ammon and Moab. So the Ammonites and the Moab actually lived in the same region right where Jacob and Laban are. And then further down is Edom, where Esau's descendants live. So on the east side of the Jordan, you have the Ammonites, the Moabites, and the Edomites, the kids of Lot and the kids of Esau, all of them mad at the sons of Isaac and Jacob, all of them. Okay, so the Ammonites are about to invade Gilead, where Jacob and Laban are. Okay, I mean, this is years later. And it says, if you take me back home to fight against the people of Ammon, and the Lord delivers them to me, shall I be your head? Are you going to make me in charge of everything? And the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, the Lord will be witness between us if we do not do according to your words. Now, this was a custom in Gilead, started by Jacob and Laban. The Lord's going to be witness between us if we do not do according to your words. He'll know if we lie and therefore punish us. So that's what it means, the Lord being witness. The Lord's going to see which one of us does right, and whoever doesn't do right, then the Lord will take care of them. So, skipping down to verse 29, it says, then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah, and he passed through Gilead and Manasseh, and passed through Mizpah of Gilead. That's another location. We want to remember Gilead, we want to remember Mizpah, because that's going to come up later in the story. And from Mizpah of Gilead, he advanced toward the people of Ammon. And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord and said, if you will indeed deliver the people of Ammon into my hands, then it will be that whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me when I return in peace from the people of Ammon, so surely be the Lord's, and I will offer it as a burnt offering. So now he doesn't have to do this. The Spirit of the Lord was already on him. He's already winning all these battles. But for some reason, he thought he had to bribe God. And sometimes we think we have to make a deal with God. Lord, if you'll just do this, then I promise I will give you my shoe forever to be yours. And we think of a thing that we promised God, like God can, okay, I wasn't going to do it, but you talked me into it.
I want the shoe.
Yeah, I need that shoe. So, but God doesn't need us to, we want to vow to serve God because we love him, not in order to get something from him or think we have to make a deal with him. So a lot of times when people made deals in the Bible, they didn't work out because God was trying to discourage people from making, I want you to serve me because you love me. You don't have to make a deal. I've already anointed you. I'm already leading you in battle. But these are his words. I promise you, God. And God was already going to do it because the Spirit of the Lord was already on him. I'll get whatever the first thing that comes out of my house. And he's thinking whether it's a cow or a sheep or a goat, a pig, whatever it is, I'll just offer it up to you. I won't even pick, right? I'll just, whatever the first thing that comes out of my house to greet me. So he wins the battle because God had already decided he was going to win the battle. Had nothing to do with the deal. And in verse 34, it says, and when Jephthah came to his house at Mizpah, there was his daughter coming out to meet him with timbrels and dancing, because that's what they did. Yay! Timbrels and dancing. And she was his only child. Besides her, he had neither son nor daughter. Well, that is what he did. So he sacrificed his daughter to the Lord because he had made that vow in front of everybody because she was the first thing that came out of the house with timbrels and dancing, right? Because that was like a tradition in that area. So Laban wasn't lying that was a tradition. He was just probably lying that that's what he would have done. Because if Jacob had said he was leaving, which he had said before, Laban would just come up with another reason to stay. Oh, wait, here's one more thing. So, but he said, in so doing, back to the story, verse 28, you did not allow me to kiss my sons and daughters. Now you have done foolishly in so doing. I just want to stop at one point. He says, my sons and daughters. Now, those daughters were his, but the sons were his grandsons. And I just want to remind us that the word sons is sometimes, you can translate it son or grandson. It's just up to the interpretation of the translator when they're reading. In this case, they probably should have translated it grandson, because Jacob didn't take any of his sons. He took that'd be a whole other interesting story had he married his sons. But he married his two daughters. So this should have been translated grandson. And I just keep bringing that up because I'm going back to Noah and his grandson. Although it says son, it should have been grandson, Canaan, who sinned and who was cursed. So it says, now you have done foolishly in so doing. This is a threat. When somebody says you have done foolishly, they're threatening you. Like in 1 Samuel chapter 13. Samuel comes to Saul. Saul had just been anointed king and been given specific instructions on to wait for me and don't do anything, Samuel says, and then I will be back and I will tell you what to do. But in verse 11 of 1 Samuel 13, it says, and Samuel said to him, Saul, what have you done? And Saul said, well, when I saw that the people were scattered from me and that you did not come within the days appointed and that the Philistines were gathered together at Mishmash, then I said, the Philistines will now come down on me at Gilgal, and I have not made supplication to the Lord. I mean, I looked around, the people were leaving, and the Philistines were there, and you were laid, and so I said, I've got to make supplication to the Lord. Therefore, I felt compelled and offered a burnt offering because I got scared. And Samuel said to Saul, you have done foolishly. So when you tell that to somebody, you're in trouble. He says, you have not kept the commandment of the Lord your God, which he commanded you. And for now, the Lord will have established your kingdom in Israel forever. And he goes on to say, but here's the consequence of your foolish act. And that's what Laban is saying to Jacob. You've done foolishly, so there's consequences about to come. Now, verse 29 says, it is in my power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me last night, the God of your father, because he believed in different gods. His daughter had them in her saddle. And he says, be careful that you speak to Jacob neither good nor bad. And now you have surely gone because you greatly long for your father's house. But why did you steal my God? So I've got two problems with you. You took my daughters and grandsons, but you also stole my gods. So I've got two issues with you. And God said, don't do any harm to him because of what he did, to your daughters. But he didn't say nothing about the gods. So why did you steal my God? Now, again, he had no idea. Jacob had no idea that that Rachel had taken these gods. Now, these gods, I had mentioned to you last week that Rachel stealing of these gods, because Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, they served the one true God. And again, she was innocently doing this. She did not know the further consequences, but when she brought in these gods, the children that she was over were Joseph and Benjamin, which was cool, but she was also over Dan and Naphtali. And Dan picked up those gods. Oh, my mom worships these gods, and the tribe of Dan continued to also worship God. So she passed that on to her children inadvertently. In Judges 18, verse 23, it says, and they called out to the children of Dan, and they turned around to Micah and says, what ails you that you have gathered such a company? So he said, you have taken away my gods, which I made. Okay, so once they got to the promised land, there was a priest named Micah who was kind of a traveling priest. Now, he wasn't supposed to be. All the priests had been assigned to specific tribes. The Levites didn't have their own land. They were assigned to land. You 7, you go with Judah, and you 12, you go with Benjamin, and you 3 priests, you go with whoever, Issachar, right? Well, this one guy's just traveling around. I'm free. And it's because he didn't feel like he was getting enough attention where he was. And so he was hired by this man. Why don't you come into my house and you can be my priest? And I've got all these gods set up here. And he says, great, I'll do it for money. And there's some ministers, that's how they feel. So when the tribe of Dan showed up, because the tribe of Dan was supposed to have conquered Philistia, which is the West Bank today, Gaza today, where all this turmoil is going on in Israel. But they were afraid to conquer the Philistines, so they went up north. We've discussed this before, and they're looking for land, and they found some land, and then they decided, we're going to take some gods with us. And so they break into this house, and they take Micah's gods. And Micah's saying, what ails you that you've gathered so first of all, why there's an army of you? And he says, you've taken away my gods. No, I'm sorry. Micah put an army together to go after Dan. And they're asking him. Dan is asking Micah, why did you bring this army with you? And he says, because you took my gods. Hello. So you've taken away my gods, which I made, and the priest, and you have gone away. Now, what more do I have? How can you say to me what ails you? I mean, you took my gods. And the children of Dan said to him, do not let your voice be heard among us, lest angry men fall upon you and you lose your life with the lives of your household. So don't get froggy with me. If you're ready to leap, come on. So, because we want those gods, and that was a thing to the tribe of Dan. I mean, and they just started worshiping idols. But again, Dan got this from his mama. Okay, Judges chapter 6. So the men of the city, this is verse 30. The men of the city said to Joash, bring out your son, that he may die, because he has torn down the altar of Baal. We say Baal. Gideon. This is Gideon when God finally came to Gideon and convinced him that he was a mighty man in valor, and Gideon's arguing like, "No, I'm not." God said, "Yes, you are," because God sees us differently than we see ourselves. He sees our potential, right? So Gideon finally believed God, and he went and he tore down the statues of Baal, which my friend Don Van says, and because he's cut down the wooden images that was beside it, so they wanted to kill him, like bring him out, bring out your son Joash, Gideon. But Joash said to all who stood against him, "Would you plead for Baal? Would you save him? Let the one who would plead for him be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him plead for himself, because his altar has been torn down." Like, why do you need to defend him? We don't need to defend God. Remember the Bible says, "Vengeance is mine," says God. God can take care of those people, whoever's messing up. And he's saying, if Baal's real, why do you have to defend him? Why do you have to punish my son? And that doesn't make any sense. Let him defend himself. In fact, and people begin to make fun of this whole idea of having these gods. In Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 5, he says, "They are upright like a palm tree, and they cannot speak." So they sit, and these were, they had big saddles on these camels, right? But they were 2 feet high, some 5 feet, some 6 feet. And he says they cannot speak. They must be carried, because they cannot go by themselves. So do not be afraid of them, for they cannot do evil, nor can they do any good. If you can carry your God, that's not a good thing. If you can lift him up, and you put God on the shelf, and you put him on your dashboard, and if you can put him different places in a drawer, he's not that strong of a God. Come here, God, hop on my lap so I can take you. That's not good. So, but people trust in things like rabbit's foots and stuff. Although my wife and I are discussing how it wasn't that good luck for the rabbit. Nope. So people have these funny good luck charms. But if your God you can hold him in your hand, he's not as powerful as you think. So anyway, Laban's all upset about these gods, and says, "Then Jacob answered and said to Laban, 2 things, because he wants to know, why did you leave early? And secondly, why did you take my gods?" So he's going to answer the first question. In verse 31, he says, "Because I was afraid, and for I said, perhaps you would take your daughters from me by force. So that's why I left, because I thought you're not going to let me leave with your daughters. As for your gods," verse 32, "with whomever you find your gods, don't let him live. In the presence of our brethren, identify what I have of yours and take it with you." For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. So he's saying, whoever took it, go ahead, you can kill them right in front of me, because they shouldn't have done it. So I just want you to know, I am not, messing with you. But now, neither man is apologizing. Okay, but we're going to get into that later, and why they had to make a covenant. And Laban, in verse 33, went into Jacob's tent. He went into Leah's tent and into the 2 maids' tents, but he did not find them. Then he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the household's idols and put them in the camel's saddle and sat on them. And Laban searched all about the tent, but did not find them. And she said to her father, "Let it not displease you, my lord, that I cannot rise before you, for the manner of women is with me." So she's sitting on the camel. Everybody else is standing around in their tent, like, "Why are you going to my tent?" But she's sitting on the camel, but she's saying, "I cannot rise. I'm sorry." Now, Leviticus 19:32 says, "You shall rise before the gray-headed and honor the presence of an old man and fear your God. I am the Lord." So he put in the law, you have to respect your elders. We don't have a culture that respects older people. We think, which is stupid, because they're smart. The older they get, the more they know, not the less they know. But we love us some youth. Oh, look, that 18-year-old. Let's just exalt that person who doesn't know anything. So, but they had in the law, elder comes in the room, you rise. So when her father came, she was supposed to have risen and gotten off the horse and risen, but she says, "I'm sorry, I can't not rise, for the manner of woman is with me." Now in Leviticus chapter 15, verse 19, it says, "If a woman has a discharge, and the discharge from her body is blood, she shall be set apart 7 days, and whoever touches her shall be unclean until evening." Also, verse 20, "Everything that she lies on, during her impurity shall be unclean. Also, everything that she sits on shall be unclean. So whoever touches her bed shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Whoever touches anything that she has sat on shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. So she's sitting on the saddle and she's saying, my womanly time is here. And so Laban is thinking a couple thoughts. I can't touch her or the saddle or I will be unclean. And also, I know she's not sitting on my idols and she's unclean. So I'm not even worried about that because she's not crazy. So he went. So that just thought didn't even enter his head. I know you're not just sitting up there on my idols. So he didn't say, okay, that's fine. But I can't touch you. Plus, why? Because you're not crazy. So he didn't. So he went on his ways and never found the idols. Right. So he says he searched but did not find the household idols. Verse 36, I think. Yes. So then Jacob was angry now. So he's getting mad. So Laban shows up mad at Jacob and only didn't kill him because God said, don't kill him, please. But now Jacob's mad at Laban. Then Jacob was angry and rebuked Laban. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, so what is my sin? What is my trespass? What is my sin that you have so hotly pursued me? You rode all this way, screaming like you're going to kill me. And we don't have your idols, right? Here's a similar sentiment in 1 Samuel chapter 24. Verse 11 says, moreover, my father, see the corner of the robe in my hand. Okay, so this is when Saul had tried to kill David, right? He threw a spear at him, didn't like his music. I felt the same way when I'm watching the American Music Awards. And so he wanted to kill, that music is killing me. Now, he really wanted to kill David because David was going to take his place. He thought he could stop God. So he's chasing him all over, and David hasn't done anything. And Jacob saying to Laban, I haven't done anything, and why are you chasing me? So remember we talked last week how Saul had gone to the bathroom in this cave, but David's men were also in the cave, in the recesses of the cave, and Saul did not know that. And he took off his robe and all that because he didn't want to soil his clothes. So David cut off a corner of the robe. And so he says to him, once the guy puts his robe back on and everything's ready to come out, he says, moreover, my father, this is David shouting at Saul, see the corner of your robe in my hand, for in that I cut off the corner of your robe and did not kill you. Know and see that there is neither evil nor rebellion in my hand, and I have not sinned against you, yet you hunt my life to take it. So why are you doing this? I didn't do anything. Now here's an important verse 12. Let the Lord judge between you and me, and let the Lord avenge me on you. So when you're saying let the Lord watch, let the Lord judge, and let the Lord be a witness, you're saying the Lord will be the umpire to decide who's safe and who's out. And who's ever out, he's going to kick out the game. So God will bring vengeance. I don't have to do it. God will do it. That's why you're saying let the Lord watch, let the Lord judge. Okay. But my hand shall not be against you, David says. As the proverb of the ancient says, wickedness proceeds from the wicked, but my hand shall not be against you. After whom has the king of Israel come out? Whom do you pursue? A dead dog? A flea? Now he's saying, it's like you're chasing, like you're on the hunt after a dead dog. What can a dead dog do to you? You're going to hunt down a dead dog? How's that going to make you feel good? I'm just a flea. Now I'm hard to catch because I'm a flea and I'm going all around. But you're going through all this effort for a flea? I'm nothing to you, is what he's saying. So you have this whole army. I'm nothing. Now, so and Jacob is saying the same thing to Laban, and he's mad. So verse 37, although you have searched all my things, what part of your household things have you found? See if here before my brethren, set it here before my brethren and your brethren, that they may judge between us both. These 20 years, now he's letting it all out now, he's mad. These 20 years I have been with you, your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried their young. I have not eaten the rams of your flock. That which was torn by beast I didn't bring to you. I bore the loss of it. You required it from my hand, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. I mean, so if animals took your stuff, I took the loss. Because you said, well, I put that in your control and that's yours. So that's one of the reasons sometimes employers will do that to employees, like their cashiers, like if somebody brings in a fake 20 or something, you got to pay for that. That's coming out of you because they're thinking that's incentive to be really diligent, to make sure there's no fake 20 or anything like that, which is part of the reason that that young man called the police when he got that fake 20 from George Floyd, because he thought they're going to take this out of my pay, and that's what Jacob is saying to Laban. If I had lost a sheep, if I had lost something, you were going to take that out of my pay. So I didn't lose anything. I was good. He says, there I was in the day, the drought consumed me and the frost by night, and my sleep departed from my eyes. Thus I have been doing your house 20 years. I served you 14 years for your $2, 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. So again, Jacob is just letting it all out. He is so mad. He's been waiting to say all this for all this time. Unless the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been with me, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. If God hadn't intervened, you would have just totally screwed me over. God has seen my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night. So he's yelling at Laban. Does Laban apologize? No. Laban says, and Laban answers to Jacob, look, these daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children. Now, he should have said grandchildren. Don't forget, it's same word. These children are my children, and this flock is my flock, and all that you see is mine. So neither one are backing down. They are accelerating, right? He says, but what can I do this day to these my daughters or their children whom they have borne? I mean, I can't kill my own daughters. I'm really mad at you, but today I'm not going to do anything right in front of you. So now, therefore, come, let us make a covenant. And he's just saying for today. He says, I'm really upset because you've stolen all this stuff. You're mad at me because you think I've accused you of all this stuff. But today I can't do anything I really want to. So let's make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. So verse 45. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. Then Jacob said to his brethren, gather stones. And they took stones and they made a heap, and they ate there on the heap, because you always eat when you're about to sign a covenant. We need to get back into that. I like that. Okay, and Laban called it Jagar Sadutha, but Jacob called it Gilead, or eventually Gilead, which means the heap of witness. So these stones shall be witness. Since we don't have a judge here, because you would sign a contract in front of a judge, like we get married in front of a priest, you want witnesses and all that. This is where all this started from. Got to have witnesses. Got to have a witness sign your marriage contract. There's no judge there to sign it. So these stones here will be the proof that we signed this covenant, that neither one of us is going to kill each other right now. He says, and Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me this day. Therefore, its name was called Gilead, which means the heap of witness, and also Mitzvah, which means the tower, the watchtower, because he said, may the Lord watch between you and me when we're absent one from another. So when we're not in each other's presence, the Lord's going to be witness. He'll be judge when we're absent one from another, that neither one of us crosses over to kill each other. He says, verse 50, if you afflict my daughters, or if you take other wives beside my daughters, although no man is with us, even though no one is with us that witness this, see, God is witness between you and me. So that's a threat. It's a threat that these stones and this pillar here, this watchtower is witness that we've made this agreement. You won't cross over here to me, and I won't cross over there to you, unless I hear that you've done bad to my daughters, and then I will cross over. But this is the thing that's going to keep us apart. You stay on your side, and Laban ultimately went back up to Syria. And Jacob, you stay on your side, and we will stay apart from each other, because if we come across each other, we know we're going to kill each other. So they called it, so sometimes you'll go to churches and they'll say, let's say the Mizpah, which means watchtower, where they'll say, may the Lord watch between you and me when we're absent one from another. And they don't realize that what they're saying is the Lord better watch, because if he doesn't, I'm going to come over there and kill you. Because, in some churches, that probably is what they're saying. But they don't mean to be saying that. So, and we just don't know, because we don't read things in context. That's all. No one did that to be evil, they just found a really cool verse. Oh, may the Lord watch between you and me when we're absent from another. Oh, that sounds nice. Let's all say that. And so people would say that at the end of services, not realizing, no, you're saying the Lord has to keep me from killing you. So that's not good. Although that's true. In some churches, they need to say that every time they depart. Okay, so he says, see, God is witness between you and me. Now, Malachi chapter 3, verse 5, this is emphasized again. Malachi chapter 3, verse 5. It says, and I will come near you for judgment, and I will be a swift witness against sorcerers, against adulterers, against perjurers, against those who exploit wage earners and widows and orphans, and against those who turn away an alien. These are the things that bother God. He's telling Israel, these are the things I'm going to be mad about, and I'll be a witness against you. So being a witness against you, when he says the Lord wants to be a witness, I'm going to testify, yes, you did these bad things, and then I'm going to be the judge and bring down judgment on you also. So he says, and here's the things that he's going to be mad about: adulterers, perjurers, against those who exploit wage earners. Now this is in the Bible. He's not really happy if there's some boss who are making people work for really bad wages. God says, I don't like that. He says against widows and orphans. And so if people are poor, and if you're exploiting them and you're not taking care of the widows, the orphans, and Jesus brought this all the time, these are the things that God will be mad about. We have our own list of things that we've decided the things we'll be mad about. God will be mad if you raise taxes, and God will be mad, and actually will be mad. Like, I don't want my taxes raised, but God doesn't, he's not that upset about it. We're upset. We have a list of things that we say, these are God's political issues, and these are the things that God's going to be mad about. And I'm not saying they're good things or bad things. I'm just saying they're our list. God has a list. We should pay attention to it, because when we're judged, we're so confused. What happened? He says, well, I told you about exploiting the wage earners, about not taking care of widows, not taking care of orphans, and against those who turn away an immigrant. Alien means immigrant. If you turn them away, I will be a witness against you. But Lord, and we act like God is stupid, and God couldn't see the future, and God would have gone, oh, well, if I had known that, I wouldn't have said this in the Bible, because I didn't know what was going to be the conditions in 2020 and how bad that would be. So just ignore this part. This doesn't apply to you. And so we just think God's stupid. I'm nervous to go against the Bible. I'm nervous to go. It's like if the Bible says it, I think, I better listen to that, because that may still be true, because I know the Bible says I'm the Lord and I change not, and I'm the same yesterday, today, and forever. So I don't have a lot of proof that God said things then, but it doesn't still mean them. He says, the reason they do these things, exploit the wage earners, the widows, the orphans, and against those who turn away an alien, because they do not fear me, says the Lord of hosts. So Malachi says, I'll be a witness against you. And so they're making this pact between Jacob and Laban. Let God be the witness who will watch to see which one of us is going to break this. And if one of us does, then God gets to have vengeance on that person. Then, verse 51 says, then Laban said to Jacob, here is the heap and here is the pillar. That's the Gilead, and here's the Mizpah, right? Which I have placed between you and me. This heap is a witness, this pillar is a witness, that I will not pass beyond this heap to you, and you will not pass beyond this heap and this pillar to me for harm. So again, that was their agreement. That's why the Lord was watching between them, so that they won't come together, so that they will stay apart. So then the God of Abraham, verse 53, the God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, and the God of their father judge between us. So he's calling on three different gods: the God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, and the God of their father, Terah. He's calling on three different gods in his mind. May they watch, because that's what Laban believed, that there's a bunch of gods. However, Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. Not the fear of his father, but the God that Isaac feared. He says, that's the God I'm going to pray to, because I saw what it did for Isaac, I saw what it did for Abraham, and that's the God that my father revered. That's the one that I'm going to swear by, because he's the one that brought me safe thus far. So they make this deal and they split up. Well, Jacob just goes from the frying pan into the fire. And next week we will see where he then runs into Esau. And that has to be resolved, because that's the whole reason he left in the first place, was to get away from Esau. And now he's just simply run right back into his territory. So we will continue from there next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. At 11 o'clock, those of you who want to watch our church service, it'll be also on the Good Shepherd page. I'll be preaching this morning, and in a surprise to me, and all the rest of you I will see next Wednesday, where we're continuing in the book of Matthew. All right, thanks so much. Goodbye.